Oh, Don Dark Zoni, welcome in, comrade. Just in time for the reading. We're on chapter 6. My mother. I know. Sea Welbs, same. That the part that sounds like where they say so dear. I love that part so much. My mother. I entered Bao Dao Gao at dusk. So he's back in China now. Remember, he spent some time back home at Mengyoungdae last chapter, and then decided he had to go back to Manchuria, back to China, and struggle again with the revolutionaries and help his dad get free. I entered Bao Dao Gao at dusk. Having felt uneasy throughout the long journey, I became more strained the moment I reached my house. But my mother was calmer and more composed than I had expected. She hugged me in delight and said, "You've made the 250-mile journey all by yourself. I've never done that, but you've played the man." Remember, this is when he's 10 years old, I believe. He's 10 or 11 at this point. He traveled to stay with his grandparents 250 miles the other way just before this. I told her briefly about affairs at Mengyoungdae and asked about my father. She said in a low voice that he was well. From her look, I guessed that my father had passed the crisis, but was still in danger. She was clearly being very cautious about being overheard or watched. I gave my younger brother some biscuits I had bought from the money I had saved from what I had received in Mengyoungdae, and I settled down for the night to swap experiences. After supper, however, Mother unexpectedly told me to leave at once because the family was under strict surveillance by the enemy. She did not tell me where my father was. She just said that he had escaped and that I must go. Though normally tender and gracious, on that evening she gave no thought to my will or intention. She ordered me to set out immediately, even though I had traveled hundreds of miles on foot in the coldest season, and she had not seen me for 2 years. So he's 12 or so. She was not allowing me to stay with her even for a night. I was struck dumb with amazement. When she told me to take my brothers with me, I asked her what she was going to do with herself. "I am waiting for your uncle to return from Simfa. On his arrival here, I will dispose of our household articles and wind up our affairs here. You must leave quickly." Unquote. She cautioned me to slip out quietly and go to Ro Kyungdu's house in Linjiang. Then she requested a slave from Taskmaster Song. He complied willingly with her request. His real name was Song Pyung Chol, but the people in Bao Dao Gao used to call him Taskmaster Song, because he always behaved like a taskmaster. All my life as a revolutionary, I have met and bid farewell to many people, but that was a particularly memorable experience. As I set out on a journey again, as soon as I had met my mother, after a fortnight's long travel from Mengyoungdae, I thought a lot about her. My mother was of a gentle character. My father was stout-hearted and strict as a revolutionary, so I received a warmer love from my mother. Being tender-hearted, she had bitterly regretted our parting when I left for Korea to study 2 years before. Although she had done nothing to stop me leaving her, being in the presence of such a strong husband, who, as my grandmother in Mengyoungdae had said, was harder-hearted than a tiger, I saw tears gathering in her eyes. She was a woman with such a kind heart as to accord a warm welcome to a stranger of my age of 13 if she knew that he needed shelter after a long journey. One spring day, a boy with serious boils on his left leg and neck had come on his uncle's back to my house in Hwacheong, Korea. He was living with his uncle because his parents had divorced. After examining the patient, my father told my mother that if the boy underwent an operation on his leg, he would be unable to walk for some time. So he should stay at her house during his treatment. She gladly agreed. Once every day after the operation, my mother helped my father to mix honey, wheat flour, and soda and apply it to the boils. As she dressed the dirty wounds, she never frowned. Thanks to her kind care, the boy recovered. His uncle, when he came to fetch him, offered a 1 won note to my father, saying, quote, "The medicinal fee would normally amount to hundreds of won, but please accept this as a token of the thanks of a poor family. I hope you will buy some wine with it." Hearing this, my mother said, "Please don't bother about the medicinal fee. It is unreasonable to take it from a poor man. I am sorry I haven't fed the boy as I should." But the man insisted on paying. If he had been rich, it would have been a different matter. But he was a poor man who had earned the money by gathering fallen pine needles from the mountain and selling them. So my parents were embarrassed. My father said to my mother that if he refused to take the money, it should be rejection of the man's gratitude. So she said that they should keep and accept his thanks. So she went to the market with the money and bought 5 yards of cotton cloth and gave it to the boy, saying that he should have some new clothes made with it for the upcoming Tano festival. At that time, 1 yard of cotton cloth.
You know what I'm saying? See what I'm saying? But I ain't shook because
We got a mama host coming in.
Right? You know what I'm saying?
Saying, know what I'm saying, too many times. 80 or 90 times? That's too many times. Once or twice is cool, but 80 or 90 times, man?
What are you, from the department of know what I'm saying? You taking
Welcome in, Mama M Media. Thank you so much for the host. We're just reading from Kim Il-sung's With the Century, his life story. It just hit me why the imperialist powers smear and slander the story of Kim Il-sung, etc. Because he is a living witness to the cruelty of Japanese occupation and American cruelty. Absolutely. And also because, again, they want to make these working class socialist leaders like Kim Il-sung and like Stalin disconnected from the masses. When in fact, if you actually read their life story, what you realize is they come from the masses. Like I always say, they emerged from the same kind of struggles the same people around them were experiencing. Unlike our leaders. So at that time, 1 yard of cotton cloth cost 35 fen. So she added 75 fen of her own to buy 1 won to the 1 won to buy cloth for the poor boy. Poor as she was not mean. She used to say, "A man dies not because he hasn't money, but because he is mortal. Money changes hands." That was her philosophy. She was truly a good-natured and sympathetic woman. When father criticized her once, in a while, she never answered back. She would apologize for having done wrong and promise not to do it again. Just gonna get a shout out over here. It's hard when someone doesn't chat when they come in. There. I think. Okay, well, Kick does not want to shout out for whatever reason. When through mischief we got her clothes dirty, damaged the household utensils, or played noisily in the house, grandmother would ask her why. she left her children alone without so much as scolding them once. "I don't think it is necessary to scold them for such a mistake," she would simply reply. She herself was proud of helping her husband in his revolutionary work, but as a woman she lived through endless hardship that she could hardly endure. She seldom lived in comfort with her husband, because he was always away from home, working for the independence of the country. I can say she was happy for about a year, when her husband was teaching at the school in Kangdong. But then, at Bao Dao Gao, for a year or two while they lived a home life together. With her husband in prison, ailing after his release, and moving from place to place under police surveillance, and after his death, with me, her son, fighting away from home for the revolution, she spent her whole life in misery and under constant strain. When she was living in Mangyeongdae too, she was always on her feet, the eldest daughter-in-law of a family of 12. What with caring for her husband and her parents-in-law, and what with her household chores of washing the dishes, laundering, and weaving, she had not a moment of leisure. During daylight, she had to work in the fields without a moment to relax, gazing up at the sun. At a time when feudalism prevailed and etiquette was extremely complicated, the duties of the eldest daughter-in-law of a large family were not simple. When boiled rice was prepared for a meal at times, her share was the scorched portion at the bottom of the pot. And when gruel was made, she drank the thinnest part of the liquid. When she was exhausted, she would go to church with my aunt. In Songsan, where the military university is now situated, there was a Presbyterian church. Many Christians lived in Namri and its vicinity. Some miserable people thought they would go to heaven after death if they believed in Jesus Christ. When parents went to church, their children followed them. In order to increase its congregation, the church frequently distributed sweets and notebooks to the children. The children liked such gifts, so they went to Sungsan in groups every Sunday. At first, I too was interested in the church and sometimes went to Sungsan with my friends. But I became tired of the tedious religious ceremony and the monotonous preaching of the minister, so I seldom went to church. One Sunday, as I ate some bean tofu made by my grandmother, I said to my father, "Father, I won't go to church today. Attending worship is not interesting." "Do as you please," he said to me, who was still too young to know the world. "In fact, there is nothing in the church. You may not go. You must believe in your own country and in your own people, rather than in Jesus Christ. And you must make up your mind to do great things for your country." After that, I stopped going to church. When I was a schoolboy in Chilgol too,
You know what I'm saying?
I did not.
See what I'm saying? But I ain't shook, because motherfuckers try to.
Yo,
take me
we got
out.
Street Cat Love coming in.
Know what I'm
Also,
Know what I'm saying? Too many times. 80 and 90 times? That's too many times. Once or twice is cool, but...
thank you, Street Cat. I can hide my crying for a second here.
You taking a norm?
Everybody go follow Street Cat Love. Thank you so much for coming in, comrade. Cutest stream on the internet. After that, I stopped going to church. When I was a schoolboy in Chilgol too, I did not go to church, although the pupils who did were under suspicion. Although the pupils who did not were under suspicion. I believe that the Christian gospel had nothing in common with the tragedy which our people were suffering. The Christian doctrine preached humanism, but the call of history for national salvation was more pressing to me, who had been anguishing over the destiny of the nation. My father was an atheist, but because he once attended Sungsel Middle School where theology was taught, he had many friends who were Christians, and I had many opportunities to meet them. Some people asked me if I was much influenced by Christianity while I grew up. I was not affected by religion, but I received a great deal of humanitarian assistance from Christians, and in return, I had an ideological influence on them. I do not think the spirit of Christianity that preaches universal peace and harmony contradicts my idea of advocating independent life for humanity. Only when my mother went to church in Songsan did I go. She went to church, but she did not believe in Jesus Christ. One day I asked her quietly, "Mother, do you go to church because you believe in God?" She smiled, shaking her head. "I do not go to church out of some belief. What is the use of going to heaven after death? Frankly, I go to church to relax." I felt pity for her and loved her all the more. She often dozed off during prayers. When everyone else stood up to say Amen at the end of the minister's prayer, she would wake up with a start. When she did not wake, even after the Amen, I would shake her to tell her that the prayer was over. One evening, together with my friends, I don't got time for low-grade trolls like yourself. See ya. One evening, together with my friends, I passed a funeral dictator. One evening, together with my friends, I passed the funeral director located by the pass at the back of the village. We children were in dread of it. As we were passing it by, a boy shouted, "A ghost is coming!" Surprised by his shout, we ran for our lives, without stopping to pick up our shoes when they slipped off. That evening, we could not return home, so we slept at a friend's house. Early the next morning, we returned home collecting our shoes along the way. Back at home, I told my mother about it. "Sing a song when you pass such a place," she said. "If you sing, nothing will come out for fear of you." She said this probably because she considered that singing would dispel my fear. After that, I used to sing a song as I passed the shed. She was gentle and generous at ordinary times, but before the enemy, she was bold and stout-hearted. In Ponghwa-ri, a few hours after my father's arrest, some Japanese policemen stormed into my house to search it. They began to search for secret documents. Filled with anger, she shouted, "Search all over the house if you want." She faced the enemy with an indomitable spirit, even throwing around and tearing clothes. The policemen lost heart and left, quite at a loss. My mother was such a woman. That evening, a snowstorm raged over River Amnok. The sound of the howling wind seemed to sweep away the forest, and the roar of the beasts in the dark night stung my heart, aching as it was with the sorrow of national misfortune. Sitting on the sleigh that glided along the boundary between the two countries, holding tightly in my arms my two younger brothers who were trembling with fear, I realized that the road of revolution was not smooth, and that it could not be easy for a mother to love her children. We three, wrapped in a quilt, trembled with cold. The night was pitch dark, and my brothers huddled up against me, murmuring that they were afraid. We stayed overnight at Yugbi on the Korean side of the river and arrived in Linjiang the next day. We met Ro Kyung-do and discovered that he was none other than the innkeeper who had helped us to get a house in Linjiang and called frequently on my father to discuss the destiny of the nation. He warmly welcomed us as important guests and treated us hospitably. His house had 7 rooms arranged on 2 sides, and we stayed in the quietest, second room on the quieter side. There were 3 guest rooms opposite our room, with a kitchen between them. These rooms were always full of guests, most of whom were going to Korea from Manchuria via Linjiang, or were coming to Manchuria from Korea. Ro Kwang-do was virtually an embarkment house for fighters of Korea's independence. A nationalist.
I've got some literature in my car that will change your whole way of thinking.
Comradesky, thank you so much for your resub. A nationalist who was thoroughly anti-Japanese, Ro Kwang-do was a man of mild yet obstinate and stubborn character. He used some of the income from his inn to support independence fighters. Because he made a scant living by selling food, I considered him a laborer, so to speak. I was not sure why he had settled in Linjiang, but rumor had it that he had been hiding in the Dandong area for a while because of the involvement in the diversion of tungsten ore into illegal channels to gain funds for the independent movement, and that after things had quieted down, he had moved to Linjiang for safety. His hometown was Hari, Kopfyong Sub-County, Taedong County, Sub-Pyeongung Province. Hari was next to Namri, my hometown, with the river Sunhwa between them. He was said to have been a hard-working farmer, but after he met my father, he had gotten into the habit of living away from home because of his involvement with the independence movement. In the course of this, he had fallen into disrepute in the eyes of his whole family, who blamed him for peddling goods instead of caring about his farm. At ebb tide, he would cross the river Sunhwa and meet my father. For this reason, he fed us well and took good care of us. My family and I owed him a great deal. During a month-long stay at his house, he did everything to make us comfortable, and always treated us with a kind smile. Once he arranged on our behalf, and at his own expense, a long-distance call to my father in Fusong. Thus I spoke on the phone for the first time in my life. My father wanted to hear the voices of all his children, so each of us, as well as my mother, spoke on the phone in turn. Mother had come to Linjiang with my uncle Huang Gon on the appointment day. On her arrival, she took us to a Chinese restaurant, telling us we were going sightseeing through the city. She bought a bowl of meat dumplings for each of us and asked about various things. At first, I thought she had taken us to the restaurant because she wanted to buy a good meal for her children, who had been under the care of other people for a month. But I discovered that she had done so because she wanted to hear how we had all been faring. Has any suspicious character appeared at the inn looking for you during your stay? She asked. Have you ever visited another host to play? How many people know you were staying at Ro's house? And then she exhorted us not to reveal our identity anywhere, on any account, and to be cautious in everything we did, until we moved to a new place. In Linjiang, too, she could not sleep at ease because of her worries about us. A rustle in the night made her wake up and listen with her full attention. How could a mother, who was so anxious about her children's safety, be so firm in sending us to Linjiang? I think that was the real love of a mother, a revolutionary love. No love in the world can be so warm, so true, and so eternal as maternal love. Even if a mother scolds or beats her children, she does not hurt them. She loves them. Her love can bring down a star from the sky, if it is for her children. A mother's love knows no reward. Still now in my dreams, I see the image of my mother.